Hey folks, Mark Murphy with TravelTube.com, and I got a banger of a show this week for you. A lot going on. I keep getting called by the networks to talk about these TSA lines and whether they're improving or not. But before I get into anything, please do me a favor. This channel, what we're doing on TravelTube.com, is designed to support travel professionals and literally anybody that's considered a travel expert. That could be a travel supplier, a destination individual who's in the destination marketing organizations, you name it, travel influencers, because a lot of them have great content that they produce on their own. That's primarily their role, and they make money that way. So, I'm obviously going to highlight those people. And all I ask, I don't ask to get paid. All I ask is that you follow the show on your favorite podcast apps, follow us on social media, subscribe on traveltube.com. We'll send you a newsletter every week highlighting all of those videos and the week's podcast. And that's it. And that's all I ask. So if I'm supporting you and you can't bother to get off your ass and follow us, then just go away, because I'm not interested in you. I'm interested in helping those who definitely need the help, which are travel agents, because you're always under attack. You're always discredited. You're always, brushed aside. It's been going on for decades. I've been in the space since 1991. I've seen it all. And so, in my opinion, if you can't support what we're doing here, then please just go away. Don't comment. Just disappear. No one will miss you, probably including your family. But if you're smart and you like someone who's an advocate for you, who actually uses their time and money to support you, that would be me, then I would greatly appreciate you doing that. Now, with that said, I'm going to get into this week because it is really interesting and there's a lot happening. So earlier this week, ICE moved into airports. What did the leftists do? Racism. These guys are racist. They're going to separate, children from their parents. And according to Hakeem Jeffries, they might even kill you. They might even start killing travelers in airports. I mean, that's the minority leader in the House. The Democrat leader, Hakeem Jeffries, actually said that his concern is ICE agents might start killing travelers. Yeah, believe it. He said it. You can go just Google it, just search it. I'm not even going to put it up. It's so disgusting. And then we get into the San Francisco incident with ICE arresting a so-called citizen, a so-called traveler, and the anti-illegal immigration crowd can't figure out, the dates and when it happened and, how this ties into ICE deployed to airports. It doesn't, but that's okay because they're not that bright. Now, Delta, because of all this chaos, came out and said, Congress, we are not going to allow you to just bypass these lines. Let the congressional clowns feel the same pain every traveler is feeling when they're standing in a line for hours on end. Let them feel the same pain. And maybe they'll get off their ass and actually do their jobs. Now, on a lighter note, United has a new seating opportunity, and it's called Relax Row, and you're going to like it, especially if you're that person that can't pay for that business class or first class ticket. You now have a much cheaper way to be much more comfortable when you travel on long haul flights. And of course, we call this the Travel Expert Channel, but we see people popping up with their opinions on things like the LaGuardia crash. And there was an op-ed, I believe it was in the New York Post, I'm going to share it with you, where this pundit, this so-called expert, had an opinion as to what happened and what the actual cause is. And you might laugh, you might cry, who knows, but whatever. And then you get into my birthplace, Chicago. Now, luckily, I got the hell out of Chicago because I'm a very independent person. So I made sure to pack up and leave Chicago when I was about 1 year of age. So yeah, I'm very independent, incredibly independent. But if you think that Chicago can't get any worse, now they have, with their failing city and their failing policies, this idea that taxing travelers at 19% when they check into a hotel on their hotel bill. Think about that. If your hotel bill is X amount of dollars, you're going to pay 19% more for the privilege of being in the city that I think has the most shootings on a consistent basis than any other city, which is a deterrent to start with, but now they're creating another deterrent, which is financial. And of course, we've got fake news everywhere. Too many people are falling for it. I'm going to get into that poor 65-year-old British grandmother and her husband. They were shackled and they were held for weeks on end. And oh my God, it's so awful. Yeah, the Guardian, that freaking rag. They call it a news publication. News, please give me a break. This one-sided article that was devoid of any actual facts that concluded with a quote from the woman who was detained. She said, "Do not travel to the USA under any circumstance." I will say, if you're an idiot like this woman and her husband, yeah, you probably shouldn't, because you'll end up the same way. But we'll get into the actual facts about that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to cover that and maybe a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, I've got ADHD. Who knows what's going to come out of my mouth? I don't even know. But we know that the big news this week continues to be these long security lines at some of the airports. And the government saying, all right, well, you know what? The Democrats aren't going to authorize this money for TSA. So we're going to bring in ICE agents to help support them. Oh my God, the horror. I can't believe they're going to do this. Because, yeah, they want to speed up lines, those long hours, long lines. And for those who haven't passed a basic civics exam ever in their life, couldn't do it today, well, and if you look at the posts on TikTok and other social media, literally it appears they never will, because they literally don't understand that there's no legal path to blocking ICE from supporting those TSA workers who continue to show up. Now, think about it. The blame lies squarely on the Democrats. So everybody who's like, it's the GOP, they control everything. You need 60 votes in the Senate. They can get 53 as Republicans. They need 7 Democrats, just 7, to come across the line and say, yeah, this has gotten ridiculous. Let's get these people paid. Because think about it. The idea behind the shutdown is a protest by the Democrats against ICE. Yet ICE is funded through 2028. So what's the point? Well, here's the point. The point is to inflict as much pain on the traveling public as possible while lying to your traveling faces. That's what they're doing. And of course, we now have the anti-ICE protesters with their pre-made signs and bullhorns at airports. I mean, it's amazing how this just organically happens. It's truly remarkable. I mean, how does this happen? Like, it's unbelievable. So let me show you what this individual had to say. Because I got to tell you, where is he? Bo. Here's Bo. I'm going to pull this up for you. And so you can see it really clearly. I got to make it a little bit bigger maybe. Yeah, make me smaller, make that bigger. This is a picture of these individuals protesting outside. It's actually a video. So I can go ahead and hit this.
Let's be clear.
Okay, well, there you have it. They just miraculously show up with pre-printed signs with their preset chants that they can all just like a bunch of seals or a bunch of robots or zombies just repeat. And this is supposed to ingratiate the traveling public to them. All while we're seeing wait lines go down because they're putting ICE in these airports. And so you ask yourself, why are they doing this? What's the point? Well, anything that Trump wants to do, whether it's beneficial or not, they have to protest. And it's all organized. And they're making it very difficult for individuals to do what they need to do. For instance, you know what? A lot of travelers, right? A lot of travelers are business travelers. As a business traveler for decades, I had to get to certain places for certain meetings at a certain time. If I show up to the airport and I've got a 5-hour line to get through, Now, luckily, I had TSA pre-check, et cetera, coming from overseas global entry, but some of those lines had been shut down. So you ask yourself, well, what am I supposed to do? Now I'm going to miss my meeting because you idiots in Congress can't do your jobs. And then I got these idiots standing outside the airport, making it even harder for them to do their jobs, those ICE agents, and protesting the idea that they could make lines potentially shorter. I mean, worst case scenario, it doesn't work. But we're already seeing it work, folks. We're seeing it work. So what do we have? Well, we've got those people that, you know, again, are such morons. It's really remarkable. So let's see. How about this one? I think this is one of them. Let's share this one. Let's see if we can give you some insights into this clown, because this person. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's not the correct one. Let me get you the right one, folks. This leftist decides that she does not want to fly now because of the whole, ICE thing. And of course, she wants what? What does she want? Here you go. She wants a refund.
So I have to fly to Brooklyn this weekend for something, and
did you ever fly to Brooklyn, folks, or did you fly into New York City? She's flying to Brooklyn, landing at that new Brooklyn airport. No, I'm just kidding. She didn't sign up for ICE at the airport when she bought her ticket. So who is giving her a refund? Literally, she thinks she's going to get a refund.
is anyone going to give me a refund? Because when I bought my ticket, I did not sign up to interact with ICE at the airport.
I didn't say
that was not part of the deal. I would say these are like extenuating emergency circumstances that should allow me to get a refund for my ticket. Any day would I rather drive than deal with ICE at the fucking airport.
Yeah, she doesn't want to deal with ICE at the airport because it's so traumatizing for this white liberal to be able to handle that, because God forbid the lines get better and she doesn't have to stand in line for 3 or 4 hours. That would just be terrible. These are the people we're dealing with. And this is what's going on constantly with these people. Of course, there's not a single thing that they could be happy about, even when it improves their quality of life, like not having to stand in line for hours on end. Okay. And this is despite the fact that in almost all cases right now, it's working. And I'm going to show you, or maybe I won't show you, but maybe I will. I don't know. There are reporters at airports like Philadelphia that are showing you like 5 people in line, whereas a day ago it was out through the front door, into the garage, wrapped around 10 times, hours long waits, et cetera. And here's a little tip for people flying out of Philadelphia as an example. Even if you're traveling out of Terminal D, if Terminal D is a freaking disaster, right? Then go to Terminal A. Go to Terminal A East or A West. They are the international terminals. It's not a big international outbound airport. And I have done this probably 50% of the time when I've traveled through Philadelphia, because I don't want to stand in line at a freaking checkpoint. I want to get the hell out of that freaking checkpoint. So with that said, that's what I'm doing. And I get the hell out and do my thing. So that's what I do. I don't know about you, but I don't mind walking all the way down to Terminal D, because once you're through security, it doesn't matter what security you go through. You don't have to go through the security for your airline. You just have to go through security. So if I go through security as if I'm traveling international, doesn't matter. I've got a valid ticket. And then I walk all the way down. I get a little more exercise. I hit my 10,000 steps. Woo, yeah, it's freaking awesome, right? But again, you've got the mainstream media reporting that the lines are getting much better. And I know, like, if you're driving right now, don't crash into a tree. If you're sitting here and you're looking at your phone, listening to this or watching this, don't drop out of your chair, because guess what? It's happening. It's actually good news. But then you have to ask yourself, what about, actually, I'm going to show you what's going on with, here, I'll pull it up because this is Philly Airport. This will actually be good. Let me just show you this because again, you're not hearing it normally. Check this out.
But I do want to point out, this is an empty line right now. We are standing in the middle where travelers come to check in for TSA. Yesterday, this was all the way back to the garage. So good news today, lines aren't too bad. We're live from PHL. Brianna.
Okay, she's live from PHL. It looks like there's about 7 people in the main line for pre-check, and then there's another one where there's like nobody, and you can just walk right up, and that's a pre-check line. So if you haven't done TSA pre-check, it's very simple to do. You just have to go and apply for it. They'll fingerprint you. They run a background check to make sure you're not some lunatic, and then you get to do the fast track. And in this case, whatever terminal they happen to be in, it's working. It's fast tracking. She just said that this line was out to the garage the day before. Yet you got people bitching about it. Oh, we don't want these people here. This is too convenient. I want to spend more hours at the airport. Yeah, because that'll really make my vacation, great. In fact, maybe I'll just check in, go to the airport, wait in the line, maybe grab some lunch afterwards, and then just leave and eat my ticket. Said nobody ever. But that's what we're dealing with. And as we go along, you have to ask yourself, what could they possibly be thinking? Oh my gosh. How about that San Francisco airport incident that happened recently where, according to the liberals that don't know what they're talking about, and were screaming at the ICE agents who were arresting, in their words, a citizen, and were like taking them while their family was there. It's like, So they're saying that the ICE being deployed to the airport, and in this case, specifically San Francisco, caused this incredibly awful situation. And the horror of it. I mean, imagine them taking this poor woman. She's brown. They put her on the ground. They handcuff her. They lift her up. She's crying. She's screaming. You got all the clowns around screaming and yelling. Yeah. Let's take a look at that for just a second here. Make sure I can pull that up. And we're going to share that for you. Make it as big as I can. All right. So here it is.
Oh my God.
Stop! Stop! Oh my God.
Everyone's going to see your face. Your neighbors will see you.
Oh my God, their child's going to be traumatized. Oh, says the liberal label.
Those 2 women have names and addresses.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, reality check, folks. What really happened? Let me think. What could have possibly happened? Oh, hold on a second. She had a final order of deportation that she ignored. She's not supposed to be in this country. Yet we're supposed to what? Let her just freely roam around the country? Sorry, folks. You get a final order of deportation. That's what the word is, final. For the folks that live in Portland, look up the word final. Final. Like, no more. You're done. Time to leave. And that's what they did. They're simply enforcing the actual laws that the Congress people that are bitching about it have passed. Some of them were around to pass some of these laws because some of these people are in their 80s and almost 90 years of age. Can you say term limits, perhaps? Or do we want dinosaurs telling us, an 88-year-old person? And they're on both sides. You got Grassley. I don't know how old he is. I mean, he's got his marbles together at least, but I think the guy's like 92. People that are in their 80s and 90s should not be in Congress, folks, especially after 30 years in Congress, effing things up all along the way. How do you think we get to $39 trillion in debt? These people vote for this shit all the time. Yet we're supposed to what? Like pay attention to them? We're supposed to what? Just be good little citizens? Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah. Or listen to these morons who can't find their ass with both hands, don't understand anything that's going on, and all they can do is pull out their phones, record something, and then, oh my God, look at this. The fake crying and all this other shit. But then they go on their trip and they spend thousands of dollars and they forget about it. But they get that viral post. And right now, to this day, there are still people posting about this American citizen woman who was taken by ICE. And this is why we can't have ICE in the airports. And, you know, they're like, oh my God, they deployed ICE and look what they're doing. They're already tormenting people and they're causing trauma for these children. All right. That arrest took place on March 22nd. The ICE deployment didn't take place until the 23rd. The folks at ICE, because you have Customs and Border Protection at airports, folks, okay, CBP, Customs and Border Protection, they are there. They are there when you come back from overseas. They reserve the right to inspect your bags and everything else. That's always been the case. I've been doing this for decades. That's not new. And they find somebody who shouldn't be in the country, who's been ordered to leave the country, yet ignores the order, and then they find her and they arrest her. And I'm supposed to be upset about that? No, I freaking love that. Get them out of this country. They don't belong here. And anybody who says, oh no, but that's not humane. I'm sorry. I thank God every day that I was born in this country, because I've been to over 80 countries around the world, and there's no country I would rather live in than the United States. And that's just me and my personal experience. And I was always thrilled to get back into this country, even after going to some amazing places. I wouldn't want to live there. I was happy visiting them. Could I go there for 3 months and, you know, hang out and enjoy myself? Absolutely. I've got a nephew that lives in Amsterdam now. My sister and her husband just went and visited him. They had an awesome time. Would they want to live in Amsterdam? No effing way. But God bless my nephew who's got dual citizenship and who's living and working over in Europe, which is great. He actually got a free education in Europe because he's a citizen of Sweden due to his mother. All right. I'm actually a dual citizen with Ireland. And anybody who's Irish, who had a grandparent that was born in Ireland, has the ability to apply for Irish citizenship. And I think that's a good thing to do. Now, do I want our public figures holding dual citizenship? Nope. Would I, if I ever ran for office, which I never will, would I say I'll renounce that, you know, birthright citizenship that I got over in Ireland? Absolutely. But I'm not going to do it because I don't plan on running for office. Does it make me more loyal to Ireland because I have ancestry, tied roots to Ireland? Absolutely not. I am loyal to the United States of America, my birthplace and my country of citizenship. That's how I feel. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. All right. But with that said, you can't believe, well, you can believe that the media will continue to make it seem as if this person that was taken into custody, as people are screaming and carrying on and getting in the way of these law enforcement officers, because they're law enforcement, folks. They're armed. They're federal law enforcement. Get in their way. They touch them. That's considered assault. That's a felony. I'm going to sneeze. Woo! Man, that drives my wife nuts. That was a loud sneeze. I apologize. Protect your ears, folks. But let's go on to more great fake news. How about Time Magazine? Did you even know it still existed? I don't think most people even know it exists, but it does have a digital edition. And for the first time in I can't tell you how many years, I've actually seen a copy of a story from Time Magazine. Now, they did a story and they published it at 5 p.m. on Monday, March 23rd. and they had a take on ICE in airports. Like this is where they're coming at it, right? And they said they spoke to anonymous sources, and according to the article, I mean, this is a crazy. I mean, I have to give the journalist, because this is real journalism. If you don't pick up the sarcasm, you're missing it. But yeah, they had 3 anonymous sources who were TSA agents in the Mid-Atlantic area. That's what they said. And those 3 had some things to say that they said they claimed that it's an insult to them that they're deploying ICE. And I'm thinking to myself, you got a situation where you're not getting paid, you're getting screwed over by Democrats. You could use all the help that you can muster because you don't want a bunch of angry people, coming up to you, because people will get aggravated standing in those freaking crazy lines. And they also said that these ICE officers can't do their complicated jobs. All right, hold on a second. Complicated jobs. They don't have the proper training to, I'm like, really? Have you guys seen the stats with TSA? How much crap gets through? It's why you need to privatize TSA. It should not be a government function. If you just privatize, it's already privatized in a bunch of airports around the country. I think San Francisco is privatized. I think Kansas City, this is just off the top of my head, airport is privatized. I might be wrong on those mentions, but there are numerous airports that have private contractors that do the TSA screening and all of that. They are not impacted by this. Who is impacted? The government workers, because the freaking scumbags that are our politicians can't do their jobs. Now, if you can take that away and privatize it, you can set aside that money, and you can have private business do it more effectively, more cost efficiently, and put it in the control of the airlines and the airport, okay? Put it in their control. They have the number one goal of safety. If you're an airline, your number one goal is safely bringing people from point A to point B, and that includes screening. If I was the pilot flying the plane, I would much rather have a private company screening than government workers screening or dealing with these shutdowns, because the shutdowns go away when it's the private sector. It'll continue to be funded. And the most amazing thing is that I'll remind you again, the ICE situation and what happened in Minnesota, and the fact that we're trying to deport the people that were let into our country illegally by the past administration, open door, 400,000 people some months coming across our border illegally, claiming asylum, yet they're coming from Mexico where they could actually claim asylum, and they're coming from 165 countries away. And if you know how asylum works, you get to the closest country that can take an asylum case where you're not going to be persecuted. So if you're coming from China, shut up. If you're coming from Guyana, if you're coming from West Africa, if you're coming from the Middle East, you're coming from Europe, it doesn't matter, folks. That's not how asylum works. So those asylum claims are going to get tossed out the window. But the problem you have is they just basically said, we want Customs and Border Protection. Instead of turning these people away under the last administration, they just documented them, said you'll get a future court date, gave them a free phone, gave them a free hotel room, gave them SNAP benefits, gave them, in some cases, Social Security benefits, paid for an airline ticket, and asked them where they wanted to go. Oh, I'd like to go to New York City. Okay, here's your ticket, man. Yeah, that's what they did. And now they don't like the process of getting them out. Well, you created the problem, Democrats. You did this. And now you are making citizens' lives miserable in order to do what? Protect illegal immigrants. Unacceptable. And anybody who doesn't know this needs to go hit themselves in the head and come around, because you are completely clueless. You have no idea what the hell you're talking about. And it aggravates me to no end when I hear this, because it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. All the negative talk, but no negative talk about anywhere up to 20 million people being let into our country who have no right to be in our country. And I will ask you to then try to cross into Mexico. I'll make it easy. try to cross into Mexico or try to cross into Canada without documentation. And let's see how that goes. Fly somewhere in the world and try to get entry into any other country. They enforce their borders. For some reason, we're the outlier, which makes absolutely no sense. But back to that Time magazine article, because it is so awesome. And I'm going to pull it up for you. Let me just see if I can find it here. Where is that article? Dag nabbit. Oh, there it is. Here you go. So here's your headline. An insult to us. TSA agents slam ICE arrival at U.S. airports. And this is how the article positions things. But for some TSA workers, the move has sparked frustration and bafflement. They're just baffled, these TSA workers. You know, if you got a low IQ, I could see why you'd be baffled. I'm not saying that they have low IQs in general, but the ones they spoke to probably do, because they spoke to these 3 TSA agents from 3 different airports. Again, there are 50,000 TSA airports. So you got a sample size of 3 out of 50,000. And they all expressed deep suspicion about whether the deployment of ICE agents is about shortening the long lines or scoring political points. Best case, they say, ICE agents will end up being in the way. Worst case, well, we've seen what ICE can do in the worst case, said one agent. Oh, Lord. Yeah. I'm not sure what they're even doing, replied another one. They don't have screening functions or training like we have. All right. Let me ask you a question. How hard is it? How hard is it to be a TSA agent? Is it really complicated? Does it require, advanced degrees? Does it require this sophisticated training? No, and no, it does not. And if it did, you wouldn't be paying people $15 to $20 an hour, $25 to $30 an hour. Okay. You wouldn't be paying them anywhere near that kind of money. You'd be paying them a lot more. So in the end, that's not the case. It's not about like, oh my God, it's such a complicated job. So they're like, they don't have the screening and training that we have. The agent said her TSA training took about 6 months and she needed a few months on the job to get a real handle on the work. Yeah. And that's why the ICE agents are there to cover exits so that when people exit, they don't come back in through the exit. Don't need any training for that. You sit in a chair as people leave. Anybody tries to come back, sir, stop. You can't come in here. You need to go through security. Whoa. I could even do that job. I could do that job. I could sit on a chair or stand by a door and make sure that nobody enters the area without being screened. Or I could be out where these massive lines are and I could help organize them better. Yeah, that's like, you could be what, like a high school junior and be able to do that? Do you need some sophisticated training to be able to do that? Yeah, none of the above, folks. Now, there are certain things that you need to understand, the equipment and the machinery, et cetera. But again, this is not what we're talking about. They're not looking through the x-ray, but they're there to facilitate. And guess what? We've already seen a massive drop in lines. Reference Exhibit A, PHL, Philadelphia International Airport, where the actual reporter from ABC News, the local affiliate, is telling you the line prior to this was to the garage. And as she's speaking about it, there's about 7 people in the line to check in now. She's like, yeah, it's definitely getting a little bit better. A little bit better? But those folks have a problem with that. Because God forbid something actually works that Trump does. Holy shit, you can't have that. That would be really bad. But again, these people do not care about the truth. They don't care about the facts. And that's why I would love to get into the LaGuardia crash, not because I'm a ghoul, because you have people doing what? Like, what are they doing? You have people coming in and telling you that they think it's something like, we haven't built a new airport in decades. Well, anybody's been to JFK, that airport's been getting rebuilt for decades. Okay. LaGuardia just did a huge expansion. Okay. It's not a new airport, but they built new terminals, etc. Again, this person, let me see if I can pull it up, was talking about, where is it? Here we go. True cause of deadly LaGuardia crash is hiding in plain sight. Now, I don't know who the hell Andrew Miller is, but he said that investigators probing the thing say multiple failures and not a single air traffic control error are to blame for the tragic deaths. Okay, we're still waiting on the final result, but this person said the biggest such failure is something that the NTSB won't examine. And he goes on to say it's because we haven't built new airports. And I will agree in part with this assessment. The ATC system, the air traffic control system, is wildly outdated. If you've been listening to what the Trump administration has been working on, they're working on upgrading that. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy has actually talked to this about how they want to update it, and they've set aside a lot of money to do that because we're running on 1980s technology, which is not good because you want to be able to move planes and be able to handle the increase in passengers that we're seeing over what we saw 20, 30 years ago. That is true. But the idea that the reason we had a crash on the runway between a plane that was landing and a fire truck that was sitting in the middle of the runway has nothing to do with whether the airport is new, has been newly constructed, has nothing to do with that. But again, we'll look at what the real answer is, and we'll eventually find out. I can't tell you what the actual answer is going to be because that would just be conjecture. Let the investigation proceed. Let them come to their conclusions, and then you can agree with that conclusion or not. But to make the statement that we haven't built new airports and that's why the plane hit the fire truck. Okay, I'm not seeing it, but again, Andrew. In fact, let's just take a quick look and see. I'm going to just see what his bona fides are if it means anything. Okay. So the latest articles from this person who wrote this, somebody named Andrew Miller, I think. Yeah, Andrew Miller. Never heard of the guy, don't know him from Adam, but the two articles that he's published on the New York Post, with the latest being the March 25th take that the airports haven't been built and therefore, new airports haven't been built in decades and that's why we had this crash. The one previous to that was on the New York Post as well. Andrew Miller shares what the players think of fixing baseball. That was from July 14, 2017. So we are approaching 8 years since the prior article in the New York Post ran. So he's obviously just a guest columnist who's writing an opinion piece. And he said that his gut feeling is that baseball is doing really well. We have a lot of exciting players who are bringing fans in. Okay. Is he a travel expert? Doesn't look like it, but typical journalist. Like I've told people in the past, I had journalists who were freelancers for me and they would write travel stuff. They might go on a cruise and write about it, whatever, right? At the same time, that same person who can't balance a checkbook, she is writing for bankrate.com, money.com, financial stuff like how to retire at 50. She's over 50. She can't balance a checkbook. She makes about, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000 a year, but you're going to take financial advice from her because she's a journalist. Yeah. Okay. Andrew, maybe you should stick to sports. We'll see. I don't know what his deal is, but maybe sports. Hey, you never know. But in addition to the LaGuardia crash, which is a horrible situation that should never have happened, and we're going to find out why it happened, we've got people that will complain that tourism is down in places like Chicago, and due in large part to the policies in Chicago where anybody that's illegal, like the person who shot the Gorman girl, 25 years old, picked up twice, released twice, hiding in the bushes with a mask on, with a loaded gun, comes out of the bushes. These college girls run away, and then he opens fire on them and shoots this girl through her neck from the back. Totally avoidable, never had to happen. And you hear these stories out of Chicago constantly. Mayor Johnson couldn't even bring himself to apologize for his policies that have led to this, the sanctuary policies. That fat slob, Pritzker, yeah, he wants to run for president. Good luck. Good luck. You were walking along that lake path, and that's where that girl was killed. And you were telling everybody how safe and how great Chicago is. Like I said, I was born in Chicago. I have family in Chicago. They're far left. They don't talk to me anymore. That's okay. But at the same time, they think that the Chicago way is the way. Now, someone should go look up the last time Chicago as a city had a non-democratic mayor. Okay, so I'm actually going to do that right now. Let's see. So Chicago, the last time they elected a Republican mayor, get ready, folks, 1931. Yet they want to blame the Trump administration for their problems. Yeah, 1931. One of their problems is they can't do math. They can't balance a budget. They're going broke. And you probably know why. I'm sure there's a ton of fraud. You have an incompetent, like you had Beetlejuice or Bug Juice, whatever the hell her name was, Lori Lightfoot, previous mayor. Remember, she had a blacks only press conference, which is against the law. It's illegal. It's called discrimination, but it's okay if you discriminate against white or Asian people. It's just not, you can do that. That's not discrimination. It's only discrimination and racism if you do it to blacks. Yeah, okay. So what do they want to do? They want to raise the hotel tax to 19% in Chicago to help fill their budget gap. 19%. So let's say you go to Chicago and you stay in, you want to stay 5 nights and you want to stay in a nice hotel. I'm not talking the peninsula, but let's say your hotel rate is $400 a night, which is not crazy. Well, if you did that for 5 nights, that's $2,000. Now I'll just round it up. Now that tax is going to cost you another $600. On top of that, depending on where you go in Chicago, you might be dodging bullets. Who knows? Because it's like literally the shooting capital of the United States these days. I don't know the exact stats, but like literally every week, there are mass shootings by gang-related people, and they have the strictest gun laws. I mean, how does this happen, folks? I thought if you ban guns in your city, which they basically make it impossible for citizens to have guns, then you're not going to have gun violence. Yet they have one of the worst records for gun violence with some of the strictest gun laws. Now, of course, they'll point to like, whoa, they can buy the guns in Indiana, come over. Legally, they can buy the guns in Indiana. So what are they doing? Like, are the criminals getting their guns legally from Indiana? No, they're buying them illegally. And you can actually do a search and find kids, a group of 10, 15 kids, waving around high-capacity magazines and Glocks and being like, yeah, we rule this corner. This is our spot. This is us. This is where our homies are. Blah, 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 whatever, right? That's what you get. But amazingly, to fix their problem, they think by charging people more to stay in their city is going to make more people want to come there. Now think about that. Listen, we're gonna sit around. We're gonna strategize here. Here's the deal. If we raise the cost of coming to our city and make it more expensive to visit here, it's going to bring more people in. What? Yes, these people are that effing stupid. Yes, they are that effing stupid. Now think about this. Why do you tax things like alcohol and cigarettes? They're called sin taxes. You know what the goal is? Get fewer people buying cigarettes and alcohol. So you can conclude that by raising taxes on travel, you're going to drive down the consumption of travel. You're going to drive down, just like cigarettes and alcohol, you're going to drive down those things. So how's it going to work for Chicago? Well, I will tell you flat out, they will get fewer conferences, fewer business travelers, fewer tourists, and people will pick better locations that are more open to tourism. period. And I say the same thing about cities like New York. But if you're housing illegal immigrants in 20 or 25% of your hotels and you take that inventory out and you're paying them full rate, the owners of those properties, guess what happens? You get less inventory, prices go up as a result of supply and demand. Now you tack on 19% to that, and wow, it gets crazy expensive. And that's what's happened in a lot of our blue cities around the country, which is pretty much every major city in the country is a blue city controlled for decades by Democrats, failing for decades. Literacy rates are a joke. The ability for kids to be anywhere close to grade level in math or reading, non-existent, yet pay teachers more money, to continue failing, tax and destroy your travel business and your hotel industry, and on and on and on. But these people are so dumb, you can't even fathom it. I mean, it's remarkable. As a guy who built businesses, built brands, and thankfully sold those brands and retired. I don't need to be doing this. Man, I just can't imagine how people would be upset with a guy that has business experience running our country, yet morons around the country and in Congress that never ran anything, never built anything, but they're telling you what works and what doesn't. And let's wrap this thing up with this. I'm going to get into the British tourists who were detained and deported. The ones saying, never come to the USA or this could happen to you. And of course, The Guardian, which is a fake news publication, had a headline and a story that didn't mention some key things that, for instance, the husband, and just so everybody knows, they left the United States because they were doing this like amazing they called it their once in a lifetime trip to the US. They were going to do the US and Canada. Okay, cool. They left the US and went into Western Canada. And at the Western Canadian checkpoint, guess what happened? They got turned away. They got turned away because the paperwork wasn't proper. Isn't that interesting? So Canada didn't allow them to enter their country. That's terrible, folks. The Canadians, they're such mean people. I'm never traveling to Canada again because they're so mean. And look at how they treat people. They wouldn't even let them into their country. But yeah, but we're supposed to let every freaking illegal alien into our country, and we're supposed to pay for them to stay here. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And we're just evil, bad people if we think anything differently. Sorry, I drew the birth card. I was lucky to be born in the United States. You weren't. I feel bad for you, but there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. The right way is to, if you want to immigrate here, you basically have to bring some value to us. We're done basically being the drop off for every person that can't read, write, or carry a job that's beyond manual labor. Sorry, that's it. And we should not allow anybody into our country that isn't self-sustaining, okay? We shouldn't. No other country, if I want to go to Thailand and live in Thailand, I have to demonstrate that I have the financial capability. I got to show them my revenue and what I'm earning and how I'm going to be able to pay to live and not become a detriment to the government of Thailand. And that's the same if I want to go live in Mexico. They're not just going to be like, okay, Mark, come on in. You need free healthcare. We got you, bro. You need a stipend. You need some food. How about a place to stay? Yeah, never happens. Only the freaking idiots in the US, government folks in the US, politicians think that's okay. Now, what's interesting is when they got turned back from Canada, of course, they got to come back through our border. And when they came back through our border, oh my God, look at what they uncovered. Oh, the husband had overstayed his visa by, hold on, get ready, 20 years. 20 years. And the wife had previously overstayed her visa on a previous trip by 4 years. So we have two people that combined stayed in our country illegally for 20 years in one case and 4 years in another, illegally, and they were taken into custody because they're not welcome here. You broke our laws. You can get the F out. Okay? That's a fact. And The Guardian makes no mention of it whatsoever. And if we pull up the Guardian article, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, because it is freaking pathetic what they publish and they call journalism. I mean, seriously pathetic. So let me get past this. Let's get this privacy thing out of the way. Oh my God, there's the poor grandmother. I feel so bad for her. Here's your headline. Don't go to the US, not with Trump in charge. The UK tourist with a valid visa detained by ICE for 6 weeks. She was in America on the trip of a lifetime when she was shackled, transported, and held for weeks on end with tourism to the US under increasing strain. She says, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Okay, so Karen Newton. It's funny, her name's freaking Karen. My wife's name is Karen. My wife isn't a Karen. This person is a liar. She did have a valid visa for this trip, but she should have been caught on entry because it would have shown that, yeah, you have a valid visa for this trip, but we just did a check and you've overstayed your visas in the past by 4 years. So if I had somebody, think logically. Karen wants to come to the country. Karen's excited to be in the United States. Karen shows up and we see that the last time or at a previous visit, she came in legally like she's doing now, yet she proceeded to overstay by 4 years. What should we do as a country? What should we do with Karen? Karen, we should have stopped you and turned you around at the point of entry wherever you came through. That was missed. However, the sharp agents on the Canadians, on the US side of the Canadian border, when you guys tried to re-enter because you weren't even being allowed to go into Canada, figured it out, saw that you had overstayed previously. You are not welcome. If you've cheated in the past and you broke our laws in the past, what's going to prevent you from breaking them this time? That's the conundrum. Of course, the scumbag journalists, if you can call them that, didn't get it, didn't mention it. She was like, she knew that international travelers were being locked up in immigration detention centers in the US. I was aware, she nods, but I never thought it would have any impact on my holiday. She had a British passport and a tourist visa. She hadn't been abroad for 8 years and was keen for some guaranteed sun. I really just wanted to get away from the house. She and her husband, Bill, had an ambitious itinerary that would take them to California, blah, 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 whatever, right? The dream holiday ended abruptly. She's like, I worried then. I was worried for him. I thought, well, at least I am here to support him. She didn't know it at the time, but it was the beginning of an ordeal that would see Karen handcuffed, shackled, and sleeping on the floor of a locked cell. Yeah, that's too bad. She doesn't have a criminal record. We don't care. She's a grandmother. We don't care. She spent 8 years working as an administrative assistant at a primary school. Oh, there's a qualification to enter our country illegally. I am not a dangerous criminal. I didn't enter the country illegally and I had everything I needed to be here. No, but bitch, you overstayed by 4 years your freaking previous visit. FYI, you're not welcome. If you overstay your visa and then you leave the country, the normal rule is you are not allowed back in for a minimum of 10 years. I don't know when she came, but again, the red flag is you did it once. We're not so sure you're not going to do it again. So this article is a complete joke. And if people in England, I just had a visitor from England, hates Trump, came to our house, has no problem coming to visit the US, has no problem staying at my house, has no problem having me take him out to dinner, but America bad. We don't like what's going on in the US while you're getting arrested for memes in the UK. And of course, this article doesn't mention any of the facts behind why this woman was stopped. And that's called fake news, folks. That's called propaganda. That's called creating a story that doesn't exist. And that's what these people did. And you know what? They have ruined so-called journalists like this, and you see them on newsreaders, you see them on the mainstream media, you see them on the New York, not New York Post, the New York Times, sometimes on the New York Post. But generally speaking, we know what outlets, MS Now, CNN. I mean, seriously, folks. And I will even say that over on the ones that lean right, they also will tell you things without giving you the full story sometimes, or they get a little, hyperbolic. But nobody can compare to the leftists, which is basically every journalist I've ever hired. They're all left wing. I had one that I would say wasn't left wing. I actually had a couple of them say, well, we're actually communists. And I was like, wow, you're a communist. How do you feel about a capitalist like me? Well, you're a good capitalist. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a good capitalist because I signed your effing check. Whatever, dude. Yeah, it's like this mindset. And unfortunately, these people cannot be helped. There's nothing that's going to make it better. There's no reasoning with these folks. And here, I'll finish with this story about the British visitor who came, who was lecturing me about the guns in the United States. And I shared with him, I said, well, of all the gun violence in the United States, do you know that of the murders by guns? And I can speak to this from being somebody who was personally affected by it, because my 42-year-old brother in 1988 was shot and killed on his front doorstep, shot and killed by a complete stranger who also happened to be a convicted felon who was not legally allowed to carry a gun. So here's the deal. If you're willing to murder somebody, which this guy was when it came to my brother, you don't worry about gun laws. And this is what I don't understand with Democrats. But out of all the, the shootings that take place and people dying in the United States, I said, do you know how many of those are actual suicides? No, of course not. And it's like 44,000 total gun deaths every year. Well, 58% of them are suicides, 58%. Okay, huge percentage. Then about 1,000 are killed by police shootings, which are 99.9% justified police killings. They're killing people that are armed, that are shooting at them, that are driving a car into them, whatever. And then I said, what do you think would happen in terms of our ranking as a country if we took out suicides and we took out, because a suicide, if you're hell bent on killing yourself, there's a lot of ways to kill yourself. You could use a gun, but if you're hell bent on killing yourself, you can find any number of ways to kill yourself. At the same time, I look at the rest of them and I say, if you take out 4 or 5 major cities in the United States where we have 95% black on black violence, and you say, where does the US rank in murders by guns worldwide? We're nowhere near the bottom when we start out, because the numbers don't reflect what's really going on. For instance, if you live in North Carolina, what are your odds of getting shot and killed? But if you live on the south side of Chicago, what are your odds of being shot and killed? A lot better. How many random shootings do you have outside of major metropolitan areas in the United States? Not a lot. How many do you have in the inner city? A ton. And it's typically criminal gangs killing other criminal gang members. And unfortunately, bad things happen to bystanders. Bad things happen to the people that can't get out of that part of town because they can't afford to move to a better place. So they got to hole up in their homes. Yet we have Democrat politicians that control all of those metropolitan cities that want to keep passing gun laws that don't take illegal guns off the street. Because illegal people, illegal aliens who broke our laws, who are committing crimes, committing rapes, committing murders, just like we saw the Gorman girl getting shot and killed by a 25-year-old Venezuelan, they don't care about the law, folks. They've already broken the law numerous times. And sanctuary policies keep releasing these criminals back into your cities. And that's where the violence continues. But of course, there's plenty of homegrown violence with the gangs and the other things in these Democrat-run cities. Take them out of the equation, and what happens? Now you fast forward, the guy gets here, and I said, I've got a lot of guns. He wanted to see my guns. So I showed him the guns. Of course, I had to show him how to handle the guns. And he was already screwing up like right out of the gate. I was like, no, that's not how you do it. I mean, I made sure the guns were unloaded. I made sure they were cleared, but I explained whenever somebody hands you a weapon, you never point it at somebody. He's like, oh, he's like, I'm like, whoa, give me that. Then he asked me if I could take him to a shooting range. So I did. Took him to a shooting range. Probably shot 300 or 400 rounds. Shot an AR-15, shot handguns. He didn't want to leave. And then he started talking about, well, because he kept on telling me about the last time they had a mass shooting in England, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, how many knifings have you had? How many murders do you have? What's your rape rate? Like, what about these grooming gangs that you have that are grooming young girls and raping them from these freaking Muslim extremists that have been welcomed into your country? Oh, I don't know. Again, it's like NIMBY. It's not in my backyard, but whatever. And then he came to the realization that maybe the gun laws are a little over the top in England. Yeah, because they don't publish it, but how often do you have a legal gun owner going out and murdering somebody with that weapon? How often does that happen in the United States? How often do you hear about it? Because if that happens, the mainstream media is going to be all over it. But when was the last time you heard a legal gun owner going on a bender and killing people? I'm not talking about a kid that takes a gun from a family member and goes out and commits a horrific school shooting. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody who's legally allowed, like me. My wife is not legally allowed to carry a gun. I am, and I always carry a gun. And I have some friends who are like, you're crazy. And I was like, well, maybe you wouldn't think I'm crazy if you knew my brother was shot and killed on his front doorstep. Maybe you wouldn't think I was crazy if you knew that my wife and daughter were passing in Boulder, Colorado, literally 5 minutes before that Muslim extremist firebombed with Molotov cocktails those 75 to 90-year-old protesters who were supporting Israel. Because God forbid you support Israel. You can't do that. And what about the shooting that took place in the grocery store a mile from my kid's house in Boulder, Colorado, where a guy went in and shot and killed 9 people plus a police officer? And my answer is really simple. I doubt I'll ever need to use my gun, but I do not ever want to be like in the Publix, down the street, buying groceries. I hear something, some commotion. Next thing I hear gunshots. First thing I'm doing is I'm getting the hell out of there. That's my first thing. I don't need to be like, Johnny on the spot, Wyatt Earp. No, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm grabbing my wife. And if it's just me, I'm getting out. If I hear it coming from the front, I'm heading towards the rear. Now, if this is a terrorist attack, there's probably going to be somebody at the rear. If it's just a lone lunatic that shouldn't have a gun, then I'm going to get out the back door and be safe. But at the same time, if I am trapped there, I am not going to just be a sitting duck. And that's why I own a gun. That's why I own a gun. And the last thing I'll tell you is one day I was riding my bike and I was coming up to a stop sign and there's a car on my left. It's like a 25 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour road, it's a little 2-lane road that leads to my house. And the car stopped at the stop sign. We both did. And they started to take off. Of course, I continued. And then they cut in front of me and almost hit me. And I had to slam on my brakes. And I was like, what the fuck? They then proceeded to do what? Now I got an expensive bike. So people will steal bikes. I've had bikes stolen from me. Not like while I'm on it, but all of a sudden they're rolling down their windows, screaming at me, and now they're following me. And I'm on a bike, one of these like bikes that you can get up to some decent speed on. Man, let me just tell you, I was very happy to know that I had something to protect me should these people try to get out of the car and attack me. And I would have every right to shoot them dead on the street if I felt my life was in danger. And I would, because I've trained on how to do this. I hope I never have to have that situation. But again, I just made sure that I was prepared for any event. And legal gun owners get trained typically. They go to the range regularly, typically. And they hope they never they just pray to God they never have to use a weapon. Because think of all the legal issues and everything that comes with that. You could go to jail. And that's the last thing I want to do. So the last thing I'm thinking about is let me pull a gun on somebody. Because if you pull a gun and there's no reason for it because you're trying to intimidate somebody, that's a felony, folks. But again, illegal, criminals that are doing the shootings, they don't care what the gun laws are. They don't care. It's a felony to brandish a weapon because I can pull up right now a bunch of kids in Chicago brandishing weapons, easily identified. Felony, 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 felony. What's Chicago mayor doing about it? Nothing. And with that, have a great week. I will catch you next week.